Ta'ala says in the Holy Quran, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, surely we have revealed to you the book with the truth, therefore serve Allah being sincere to Him and obedience. Now if we continue on to the next hadith in the book, 40 hadiths by Imam Kumayl, the hadith which we examine and the hadith which he goes through is in regards to the topic of Ikhlas, meaning sincerity. Ikhlas in its most simple form means to perform our actions and to perform our deeds solely for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not for any other motives, not for the pleasure of other people apart from Allah, but simply in order to please Him and to make Him happy. It is the act of purifying our intentions so that any act of worship or any act of obedience is purely to the person or to the Creator, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Himself. And I'll first narrate the hadith which forms the basis of the lecture. And from there we can examine what sincerity is as a concept, how we can try and attain sincerity in our actions, as well as the benefits which come from having sincerity in our worship and in our daily lives. Now the hadith is narrated from Shaykh al-Kulayni, and he narrates it from Ali ibn Ibrahim, from his father, from al-Qasim ibn Muhammad, from al-Minqari, from Sufyan ibn Uyayna, from Abu Abdullah Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salam, who explains the saying of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Holy Quran, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that He might try you to see which of you is fairest in works. Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam says in regards to this verse of the Quran that it does not mean one of you whose deeds are more numerous, but one who is more rightful in his conduct. And this righteousness is nothing but fear of God, fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and sincerity in niyyah, sincerity in intention. Then Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam goes on to say that to persevere or to continue doing an action until it becomes sincere is much more difficult than performing the action itself. And sincerity of the action lies in that you should not desire anyone to praise you for this except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Himself, and the niyyah supersedes the action. So if we're trying to understand what Ikhlas is and what the meaning of it is, firstly and literally it means to have sincerity. And this sincerity must be in all actions, in every part of our day-to-day lives, but especially through worship or ibadah. And although it means that you should be sincere when you're dealing with your friends, when you're dealing with your family or your colleagues, it means that throughout these interactions, everything you should do should be with sincerity and for the sole reason of seeking to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whether we are studying, whether we are working, whether we are relaxing with our friends or our family, our intention should always be aligned to seeking the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Amir al-Mu'mineen Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam had said that the most beloved deeds, the most beloved actions in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are those which are done consistently, repeatedly, over time, even if they are small. Even things which we might class as mundane actions, things which might not have relevance in the grand scheme of things, such as being kind to our neighbours, such as being honest when we are conducting business with people. These can become acts of worship if we do it with the sincerity and with the intention of seeking goodness and seeking the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And a sincere person does something only to please Allah Himself, not to please the people who are surrounded by Him. People only have an effect on you in this world. When you die and when you are called up to answer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, these people will not be there to answer for you. People can only have an effect on you in this world. Because at the end of the day, people will leave you. People will die, people will betray you, people will not be there for you in every single moment of need. Of course, on the other hand, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is always there at every moment in time to help guide you through life and guide you through any problems. But people only have an effect on you in this world. They can only harm you, and they can only shape the course of your life in this world. So when it comes to your fate, you must determine then how you will carry out actions and who the benefit these actions will be towards, what you will do these actions for, what purpose, and who you are aiming to please with them. Will you be doing them so that you can be benefited in this world by people and so that you can gain recognition? Will you be doing it so that people recognize you, so that you become famous for any of your deeds? Or will you be doing actions that will lead to you being admired by people and gaining a sense of famousness in this world for the actions we should do? For example, if I come and sit on this minbar just now, am I doing it to get recognition? Am I doing it so that people will look at me and think this is an intelligent person, this is someone who wants to be famous, he is worthy of praise? Or am I sitting here with the intention to try and do my best to spread the message of Islam, to guide people towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to help some of the shabab understand their religion a little bit better? We need to determine if we are doing something like this, whether it is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's sake, or whether we are doing it not just for the people, but for ourselves as well. In Bihar al-Anwar is narrated that the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said that a servant cannot reach the reality of Ikhlas unless he does not like people praising him for the actions he has done, which are only for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is one of the reasons that we should be very wary of praise that we get for doing deeds or doing actions. We shouldn't let any praise which we receive for doing something good get to our egos and make us feel that we are more important than we actually are. Because at the end of the day, none of us can call ourselves more than a servant or a slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sincerity also means purging and getting rid of all impurities. It means that the actions that you take are for Allah alone, and you should not desire any reward for it in this world. And the reason for this is clear. The rewards which you will gain in this world and all of the material, worldly rewards are a temporary thing. When you die, all material pleasures and rewards of this dunya will end. You, for example, won't take your BMW or you won't take your 5-bedroom mansion with you when you go to meet your Creator on the day of Qiyamah. You won't take your money and the status and the ego and the fame that you might have acquired and attained in this world when you are faced to explain the actions which you committed during your life to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. However, when you are faced with Allah on the day of reckoning, on the day of judgment, Allah will ask you about the intentions behind all the actions which you did. He will question you. Did you do this for my sake? Did you do this for the sake of my religion which I blessed you with? Or did you do it in order to gain benefit for yourself in this world? Because ultimately, anything we do in this world should be in order to work for the akhirah, for the hereafter, not for this dunya. In the hadith I mentioned at the start from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, there are 2 criteria for the goodness of any action which you do. The first is that you should have fear and awe of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the other is that you should have sincerity in your niyyah and your intention, and you should have purity in the purpose when you do an action. If we look first at the fear and the awe which we should have of Allah, this naturally increases our piety and it naturally increases our taqwa in this life. And as a result, this leads to the effectiveness of our worship, of our ibadah. The taqwa that you get as a result of sincerity is something which brings you closer to God. It is something which means that He looks at you with happiness for the way that you are conducting yourselves. And this is something which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala declares Himself in the Holy Quran when He says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Allah only accepts from the God-fearing people, the people who have fear of Him. This is the only type of people which He accepts deeds from. And we also need to have sincere intention and a pure purpose, meaning our niyyah needs to be clear and it needs to be pure. Nothing is as important in ibadah as intention and purity, because the relationship between the niyyah and ibadah is like the same relationship between the soul, the ruh, and the body. Without one another, they cannot function well, they cannot fit in harmony with one another. Therefore, in any act of ibadah that we do, it needs to be clear what our intention is, and that intention must be pure, and it must be for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. Because no worship, no ibadah is acceptable to Allah without sincere niyyah, and unless it is free from the outwards riyah that people may have, and shirk as well. Now, some people ask, what does shirk have to do with this concept of the pure niyyah? And what is shirk in ibadah in this sense? Shirk in ibadah means that if this ibadah is for somebody else's satisfaction rather than Allah's, and it is for other people that may be around you, then it is classed as outward shirk. And in fiqh, they would class that as riyah as well. If it is for your own satisfaction and you are doing ibadah for your own personal gains, then this is what we call inward, hidden shirk. And this invalidates the ibadah in the view of the ulama, and it makes it something which is unacceptable for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Examples of this are, for example, praying Salat al-Layl in order to increase your own livelihood. Or, for example, giving sadaqah simply for the sake of gaining personal safety for yourself. Or giving zakat in order to increase your own wealth. Meaning that you do these actions not for the sake of pleasing Allah, but in order to get benefit and reward for yourself in this world. Anytime you give sadaqah or you give zakat, it should be for the sake of bringing you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not for Allah to bless you with good things in this world. And although the ibadah is still valid, and the person who does these things is considered to have performed his taklif and done his duty as per the requirements of the Sharia, these things would not amount to worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Nor are they characterized with having sincere niyyah and having pure intentions either. Rather, this type of ibadah aims to benefit a person with mundane benefits that will only help him in this world. As we mentioned, money, fame, these things matter, in no sense whatsoever in this world. You might get some pleasure out of it in this dunya, but when it comes to the akhirah, there will be no benefit for it whatsoever. So I'll give two scenarios which explain what this is. The first scenario is that a person comes and he prays in the masjid. And the reason why he comes and prays in the masjid rather than praying at home is that so that people can see him and that he can be recognized, and so that people will look at him and think that this is a pious individual with very good iman and taqwa, etc. The second example is that this same person prays at home, away from the eyes of other people, and he prays solely for the sake of worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In the first scenario, where he comes to the mosque and he prays in front of people to gain recognition, to gain fame and to boost his ego, then this action and this ibadah is tainted by the sin of riyah. And in the second scenario, where he prays at home, away from the eyes of people, doing something only for Allah's sake, then this is classed as pure niyyah and ibadah, which is accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So in both scenarios, the action is the same. He is still performing an act of worship. He is still doing the action itself. He's still doing salah, he's still praying. In the first example, where he does salah in order to be recognized and gain fame, this is not acceptable. And in fact, it is a form of shirk. However, in the second example, where he does it solely for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's sake, he is not associating someone worthy alongside Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is doing it solely for his sake. One of the stories which I mentioned before, a couple of months ago, and something everyone has probably heard, was a story about one of the men who used to come to the mosque. And for over 30 years he would come and he would be on time for his salah. And each time the call for prayer would come, he would call the people to join the ranks in prayer, and he would go and stand in the very front line of the salah. He would make it known that he is coming every week, and that he is going to be the person who stands in the front line, and he does tasbih al-Zahra, and he does all of the actions. One day he comes slightly late for salah, and the prayer has already started. And he's forced to go and stand at the very back of the congregation where nobody can see him. And when he stands at the back, he feels uncomfortable and he feels displeasure. He's unhappy that he's not standing in the front row. And it's in this moment where he realized that for 30 years, when he had made it the intention to go and stand at the front of Salah, he wasn't doing this for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's sake. He was doing this because he gained pleasure from people seeing him come and stand in the front row and thinking of him as a pious individual, a man of religion, someone who does not fault his prayers. And from this he realizes that 30 years worth of ibadah, 30 years worth of salah has been invalidated. Why? Because he wasn't doing that salah and doing all of these actions for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He was doing it for the sake of recognition by his peers and the people around him. And as a result of this, he realized that he will now have to redo 30 years worth of salah because all of these years before him, all of the 5 prayers he would do every day were invalid. He thought his intention was pure. What did he have to do? Had to redo 30 years worth of ibadah because he felt that they were not done sincerely before. Now the masajid, the Husayniyah, the center, whatever you want to choose, these are places where unfortunately you will see insincerity, the lack of ikhlas most common. You would think that the mosque or the masjid or the Husayniyah would be the number one place where people would come to be sincere and to have ikhlas. But unfortunately, it is the opposite. When people enter the room in the masjid or in the Husayniyah, sometimes you will see people come with the loudest salam. When they walk in the door, salam alaikum, saying hello to everybody. They walk around with their pride and their ego. When it comes to the salah, they make it known that everyone should come with the loudness of their voices. For some people, their niyyah is clean, 100% pure. And they're doing it for the benefit of those around them to gain closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And out of fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But some people come with the pride and the ego along with it. They want to have the fame that comes along with it. Do you know why you're supposed to send salam? Do you know why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has encouraged this form of greeting? Is Islam encouraging you to come and to make a scene out of yourself, or is it to send peace and blessings on those who are around you? Are you doing it to make Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala happy, or are you doing it so that other people around you will be happy that you have entered the room and that they can recognize you and make you a famous individual? Why do some people then make the loudest noise? Why do some people put themselves at the forefront of any occasion? When anything is happening, they have to be at the center of it. They have to be in the middle of it. They have to have the loudest voices. They think that they are superior because they may come wearing their agal or their bisht or whatever they want to wear, and they make themselves seem like they're the most famous individual walking in, like they're a superstar. Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq addresses something like this. He says that whoever performs an act to be seen by others, he performs a type of worship or any action in order to be seen and recognized by other people, he has associated partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, meaning shirk. And this is something hard to grasp for some people, that when they come in and they make themselves the center of attention, they may unknowingly be committing shirk because they want to be at the forefront of the action and make them the most important, not just person, but thing. The children who sit and play on their phones or their iPads at the back, or you see them running about, these kids are the exact same level and have the exact same status, if not higher, than the individuals who may come in and who may think of themselves as the most important people in these gatherings. And so one of the lessons to learn is not to come to the Husayniyah to be prideful and boastful and to show off. The reason you are coming here is for one reason alone, and it is to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in the process of doing so, you should be benefiting the people around you by bringing them closer to Allah, not by boosting your own ego and making yourself out to be something bigger than you are. So have sincerity in your actions. And this applies to every single person sitting in this room and myself. Be sincere in them, be humble, and do these actions for the sake of Allah alone. Now you might ask, how does somebody gain ikhlas? How do you gain sincerity? It's all very well someone telling you that you should be sincere, but what are the practical steps that you can attain to have ikhlas? The first recommendation which has been given to us by the ulama is to start off any action with dhikr. Therefore, anything that you do, before you start it, say Bismillah. Because when you say Bismillah before an action, you're reminding yourself that before you do it, you must be doing it for the sake of God. The second thing is to seek knowledge, one of the most important things in Islam. Learn about the lives of the prophets, learn about the lives of the imams, learn about the lives of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. Because these people exemplified ikhlas in every action that they did, and in any aspect of life, they were the ones who came with true sincerity. The third piece of advice is to avoid ostentation, meaning that you should perform good deeds in secret wherever it is possible, because this helps purify the intention. The most obvious example of this is when you give charity to people. You should not give charity openly and by using your voices. Whenever you can keep this hidden from other people, it is better for you. And lastly, you should try and pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Make dua to Him, but don't make dua for worldly things. Don't make dua for more money. Don't make dua to have a Mercedes. Don't make dua to have a bigger house. Make dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you the opportunity and the blessing to be sincere in your worship towards Him. Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam beautifully demonstrates this type of dua in Sahifa Sajjadiyya when he says, Ya Allah, make my intention sincere and my actions righteous. And one warning which I have to people is that you can be sincere and you can have a pure niyyah and your action can be done for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but you can still be punished by Him for doing this action. Now you might think, how does this make sense? I'll tell you how it makes sense, and I'll tell you the basis which it comes from. In Al-Kafi, Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam tells us, he says that perseverance in an action is more difficult than the act itself. And one of the companions came to him and he said, what do you mean by perseverance in action? What does this phrase mean? Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam says that a man might do some kindness to one of his relatives or his family members. He may do a nice, kind action towards them. And he might do this for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And after he does this, the reward of a good deed is written in his book by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah writes down that this individual did a good deed. And this will count towards his deeds on the day of Qiyamah. But later on, this person may go and after he has done this action, he mentions to somebody that he did it. And when he does this, the reward which he was given as a good deed will be changed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Originally, it was a good deed which was performed secretly, and now it is a good deed which has been performed openly. He has given money to someone, he has done goodness, but he's then mentioned it to someone that he did it, meaning that it is a good deed, but he's now beginning to say it in front of people. Then he starts mentioning it to more people, and he starts thinking of himself in a higher regard than he actually is. And when he starts doing this, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes away that good deed which he's had and he puts it down as a sin, because at this stage that person has committed the sin of riya. He has started showing off and boasting and bringing his ego above the level where it should be. Therefore, you started off doing something sincere. Your niyyah was clear and pure, and you did it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But after it, you began to show off. After it, you began to boast about what you did, and this good deed which you started with gets wiped clean and turns into a sin for you. And therefore, it's important to be careful, even in our acts of ibadah or worship, to be aware and conscious of not just the action itself, but what follows after it. One of the stories which someone mentioned to me was from Sayyid Jasif al-Rijawi, but personally I heard it from Sayyid Abbas Aidiyah, where he narrated about a famous mullah in Iran who was well known for reciting in majalis, and he was among the most well known and renowned reciters. And one day he was in the marketplace doing some shopping when an old lady came up to him. Her abaya was tattered and dirty, and she said to him, Muharram is coming up. I have saved all year in order to have someone come and recite in the majalis for Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. And now I have been blessed with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that you are in my presence, and I have the ability to ask you if you will read in the majlis of Imam al-Hussein for me in my house. And this mullah felt ashamed to say no. He felt embarrassed to say no to an old woman. Now the story which Sayyid Abbas Ailiya recites about this mullah, the friend of the mullah is having a dream, and the mullah has passed away. In this dream, the friend of the mullah comes to him and he asks, I know that all your life you recited in the majalis for Imam Hussein alayhi salam. I know that you read so many latmiyat, so many different types of eulogies for Imam Hussein and Ahlul Bayt. Tell me then, how is your state in Barzakh? How is the environment which you're in? What is the status of what you're like? Are you okay? And the mullah says, it's very difficult, and I'm being punished and I'm being tormented in Barzakh. Now his friend is very confused, because if someone is devoting themselves to the majalis of Imam Hussein, surely this is something which Allah will reward that person for. And he goes on to talk about this old lady. So he goes to her house, and when he gets there, it's one of these mud huts. You know, in Iraq they have the small huts that people live in, the poor people. And he walks in and he expects there to be a majlis, maybe 20, 30 people, but there's only 3 or 4 elderly women sitting on the floor. And he says, I thought there was supposed to be a majlis. She said, yes, this is the majlis. I have saved up all year a very small amount of money, and I would like to give it to you to read in my majlis. And he refuses the money, and he reads for Imam Hussein alayhi salam. And the women are crying, and he cries at the end of it too. And when the woman comes to give him the money again, he refuses it, and he says, no, this is my gift to you for Abu Abdullah. Now going back to the dream, the friend of the mullah asks him, tell me why you're being punished and tormented in Barzakh. And he says, out of all the years I read in the majalis of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, only one majlis was accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Years and years and thousands of majalis, none were accepted except one. And that one majlis that was accepted was from this old lady when she invited me to her house, and I didn't take any money from it, and I didn't gain anything from it. Nobody was there with a camera filming him. Nobody was there to go and tell people, oh, this mullah, he came and he read for free. None of that. He read it and he left and he went home and he didn't tell anyone. He says to his friend, all of the ibadah which I thought I was doing was wiped clean, because none of it was sincere. None of it was for the intention of pleasing Allah. Only this one majlis that I went to was accepted by him. Amir al-Mu'mineen Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam says that happy is the person who obeys Allah out of sincerity. And he then goes on in a different statement and he says that whoever purifies his ibadah for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has achieved happiness. Now you'll see some people who say that they are religious individuals. They come to the mosque, they come to the Husseiniyah, but they're not happy. In their lives they're depressed. Nothing keeps them going, they have no hope. They should reflect on this statement from Amir al-Mu'mineen and think, if you are conducting all of your ibadah as you should be, but you're still not happy, then maybe you're not being sincere in your actions. This is something to ponder over and think about. Has the quality of your Ikhlas been present in your ibadah? Because as Imam Ali alayhi salam says, whoever is sincere and whoever has Ikhlas will reach his wishes. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant victory to the mu'mineen and the mazlumeen, and for all the shuhada, especially in Gaza and in Palestine and Lebanon. Please recite Surah Al-Fatiha after salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.